Hi, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Let me try to share my screen and let's get this started. There we are. Do you see my screen, Stephen?
Let me just check. I'm just doing my my own setup. Bear with me. I do
Always well
indeed.
prepared. Great.
I do
Okay.
indeed. There we go.
Okay, welcome everybody. I can see people are still tickling in, but let's just slowly get started. Welcome to this release webinar for our fall release or third release this year of Perfion 5.8. My name is Jeppe Hatting, and with me I got my good colleague Stephen Rainbow, and this is the agenda that we're going to go through today. Before we get started, I just want to introduce you guys to this platform here, Webinar Geek, if you're not familiar. There should be a menu where you can click Q&A, and there you can ask some questions. Me and Stephen will try to answer them either by text or we will poke one another and say there's something asking a good questions. So please feel free to use that. We'll also try to do it a little interactive. You know, you can create polls, so might do that once or twice during the webinar. Other than that, yeah, let's just get started. So this is the agenda of today. We are in the process of releasing. We had a target release for this week, but it's probably gonna be in the early 2 weeks of December instead. We need to do a little more testing to make sure everything is working as we want it to. But the release for the agenda for today looks something like this. I'm going to start by going through the release highlights. It contains a lot of different things, but we're going to highlight what we feel are the most important ones. Then Stephen is going to take over and do a little demo of some of the features we're introducing. And then we're going to look at some other news regarding Perfion and the platform and look at the roadmap for the next years. First thing first, my name is Jeppe Hatting. I'm the product manager for Perfion here at Boyum. And with me today, I got my good colleague Stephen Rainbow, advisor and pre-sales consultants. Our contact information is listed here, and this webinar recording will be sent to all of you afterwards if you don't have time to participate with all of it, or you miss some of it, or you just want to replay it. Great. Our release here, our R3 for this year, which is very special. We normally only do 2 releases per year, but as there were something on our first release year that we missed, notably notifications, we did a small release this summer, and now we're back with our main release. That's going to be very much the exception, doing 3 releases a year. We're going to continue only doing 1 in the spring and 1 in the fall next year, and probably also the years after that. But this year we did it a bit different. Now, the headlines for this release here. So what's going to be immediately obvious to anybody who starts in the new release is that Perfion now looks a bit different. We are in the process of doing a complete makeover of what the Perfion application looks like, and you're going to see the first step of this today. Then this is also the release where we introduce some real AI functionality within Perfion. Previously, you've been able to integrate AI, ChatGPT, and stuff like that in Perfion through actions and some customization in there. But now we're adding some actual real life implementation of AI in Perfion to help you. Then we're also in the process of continuously adding stuff from the Windows client to the web client. So we're going to give you an overview of what we've now added to the web client. We've done a little love and care for the import wizard. It has some cool new functionality. Same with the new importer we introduced last year, which was a mighty improvement in performance compared to the old one. We're also adding some new stuff to that one. We got some cool little improvements to actions, and then we're also getting the UI in Portuguese. That's Brazilian Portuguese for those people in that region of the world or with that language preference. We worked a little on performance also this year, especially if you have deep hierarchies, then you should be able to see some increased performance also if you, or especially if you also use a lot of related values. Speaking of related values, we are also adding better support for actually using files as related values. So that was the headlines. Let's take a little deeper dive into it. So we have what we call the Boyum Makeover Part 1. As you probably know, Perfion was acquired by Boyum IT a couple of years ago. And as part of that integration process, we want to make sure that Perfion follows the look and feel of the rest of the Boyum products and the Boyum company itself. This has a number of actual benefits, which I, as a product manager, is quite excited about. One thing is that it allows us to redesign and rethink some of the user scenarios we have in Perfion, and that's a very exciting process. But for the first release here, what you're only going to notice is that our login screen and also the UI header in the top of the menu, that will look a bit different. It's now dark with some orange accents on it. The only thing that's actually different functionality-wise is that the tools menu, which used to be placed, I think, right before actions in the top bar, that's now placed all the way to the right in the little wrench out there. That's the only thing that's actually changed in this one. Otherwise, functionality, that will be exactly the same. For this release, we only did the login part at the top header, and for next release, we hope to do the rest of the applications. But one of our requirements for this makeover is that we will not lose functionality, but it does give us the chance to redesign some of the components we're working with. So we should see some increased performance, or at least some increased usability, where it's a bit easier to navigate, some better support for keyboard navigation, and just a little cleaner, a little more modern UI. The focus for this, one of the other benefits is that we are now working with a dedicated design team that Boyum have, and their focus for when they design UI is accessibility. Everything needs to be very readable, more contrast in the colors, bit of a consistent theme, and always keyboard navigable. It also gives a bit technical update where some of the components of the work behind the scene that's a little different, which should also lead to performance increases in some areas. But again, our main criteria for doing this is we will not change, or at least we will not reduce any functionality. It will only be the same or better. That's the goal of this this makeover here. But I'm very excited for it. I'm very interested in hearing how you take to this new design and how you feel about it. Next thing is that we add a number of AI features in Perfion to actually work with AI. In this case, it's OpenAI in the first release here, where you can work with that natively within Perfion. We have a number of features that support this. The main one being what we call the template-based value generation. So that's one of the use cases we know a lot of you are already using, but you do it now with actions, where you have some way of writing a prompt in the Perfion, and then you send that to the AI model, and then you get a response back. We now have a dedicated functionality to do that on text and string features. So on these text and string features, you can right click and say create with AI. This opens the little prompt, which is built upon our formula editor. So if you're familiar with how we can build formulas in Perfion, this is how you can take build as text based on other features you have in Perfion. You can now use that to actually build some dynamic prompts, and these can be saved and reused as templates so other users can also use them. Steam is going to do a deeper dive into how that works in a minute. I just noticed that it's very nice to build these cool templates. You can save them, and it also works quite well with rich text also. So if you have these HTML formatted text, it can also actually build those. Then we have a new tool for the import wizards, which we call the auto mapping. Building these mappings you get from suppliers or wherever you get your product from, and mapping them to your own Perfion, that can be a long process. But now we have some tools in this to actually just click a button, and we will send the entire import schema or the headers you have in your import file. It will match that with the features you have in Perfion and make some guesses to this feature called color with a U that probably matches your color without the U in Perfion, and it should also match the languages, and it actually works quite well, especially together with the option we now have to save and reload these mappings. Then this can really speed up how to do these big complicated imports. Last thing is more for the technically inclined one of you guys, is that we now have a dedicated command. It's called select GPT to actually interact with these AI models. Before, when you did action, you should interact with ChatGPT, then you had to do an API call, and that could be a bit technical. You had to know what a REST call is, with the different commands you can do in there, and authentication methods. Now it simply just works out of the box, just like you would do query data from Perfion. You write in the script column, you write your prompt, and that can use the classic ways of working with variables and features and actions where you can insert different features with curly brackets. And then you have some parameters. You can set the temperature, you can set how many tokens the model can use, and you can decide which model you want to use, and simply send that to ChatGPT, and you get a response back, and then you can use that for whatever you want. And that's I think that opens up some cool use cases, and it should also make it a lot more approachable to build these action commands, especially if you are not that technically inclined. Uh, yes. One thing to note when you talk about these AI commands is that they do require a subscription, in this case to OpenAI, and that's handled outside of Perfion. So what you do is that you go onto the ChatGPT, the OpenAI website, and you register with a kitty cat there. They will give you a little key, a little text, which you then insert in Perfion, and then this will enable you to use all of these functionality. All of this administration that can AI that can of course be administered in Perfion. We have a new section in the web client called AI integration. In here you set up your which service to use. For now it's only OpenAI. You input your key and then you choose which default model you want to use for this. Be aware that these models, they can have some different performances and they can also have different costs. I think Steve and I played a little with it and he found that ChatGPT 5, that was actually quite a slow model, but there is one called ChatGPT the 5.1 that's quite fast, and some of the older models are also quite fast. But that's really dependent on OpenAI and how they handle things. But you are free to use the model you feel gives the best results. Besides that, you can also work with these enrichment templates from the admin section here. So if you don't want to go to the products and check which templates do I have, you have a nice overview on here for the admin section, but you also can update them and change them. The input wizard, I mentioned that you now have the option for saving and loading these mappings. So when you do these big, complicated import sheets, you don't have to redo these every time. So whenever you get a sheet, you simply map it in, and then you can save this mapping. You can share that with other users, and it also saves with the options you have. So if you decide that this import should not be allowed to create new items, that option can be saved with this one. So again, and together with the AI mapping, these imports are designed to become a really cool tool to handle your imports to make sure that when you get the same Excel sheet from the same supplier, the same source multiple times, then you don't have to redo the mappings every time. Yeah. And then we are continuing to lift functionality from the Windows client to the web client. In this batch, we've now got the company settings, which are more like these general settings for Perfion. They are mostly related for the supplier portal for now at least, but we can add some more there in the future. You can manage your SMTP server, so you can set up from which servers should emails be sent from this Perfion. And you can customize your email templates also from in here. And you can manage your translation. So this is where you can decide if you want to use Google or you want to use DeepL. And if you're using DeepL, then you can now also manage the dictionaries in there. We also did some update to how we manage these DeepL dictionaries, whereas in the old version of Perfion, you had to create a new dictionary every time you wanted to update one. That of course some limitations in DeepL, which are still there, but now we've added an extra layer on top of it. So for you guys, when you just edit these dictionaries or these glossaries, it's called, sorry, then it looks like you're just adding the existing one. And then we do some behind the scene magics to actually see this. We also added some license tools, so now you can actually update your Perfion license directly from the web client. That shouldn't be something you need to do on a regular basis because that should be handled by the application server and a scheduled job to check this. But if you some for some reason need to go in or check or update your license, then you now can do this directly from the web client. The new importer that came out yesterday, it has seen a huge increase in performance compared to the old importer, especially when you do very big imports where there are actually very little changes. We know a lot of customers, they have big synchronization from the ERP system that runs every night, which actually doesn't contain that many changes. And in those cases, the new importer is really efficient. So if you're not already using this, I would strongly consider looking into this because we have seen some very incredible performance improvements in using the new importer. Now it also supports our staging. So if you are one of those who actually use staging in Perfion, then it now supports that. And now you can also update your parent hierarchy. So if you import some items in Perfion and you didn't get its placements in the item hierarchy right the first time, it can now be updated through the new importer also. we got a couple of improvements to actions. First one being that now it is possible to get actions to write out the file, which you can get from the job log. The use case here is that when you work with the Windows client, then you can always output a file to a local file drive, and you can easily get it from there. You don't have the same option in the web client of that there was before. Now you can actually do that. So if you have an action that takes some products and output them to a file or product sheet or whatever, then you can get that directly from the job log in the Windows client. This action that feature is added in all of our write commands in action. So the write fixed width, write CSV, write JSON, write XML, write Excel, and the general write file. They are now all support writing files to the job log. Then you can download those either one at a time or all of them in a big zip file. I think that's a very convenient action to use. Another one, which is a personal favorite of mine, is that if you're used to working with action, especially these trigger actions or actions from the grid, then it can be a bit of a job to actually grab that output from the action and start working with that in the action. We made that a bit easier with a new action command called select Perfion from table. What it does is that it can take a table. Most often it's just like a list of item IDs, so it's different IDs of what the internal IDs are in Perfion, and you can now run this command directly on those IDs to fetch some additional information. So if you have a table that contains a key to a product data somehow, then it's very easy to grab and enrich that data further with something you already stored in Perfion. And you have some different options for how you would want to join these two data sets together. Stephen is going to show that in a minute, but I think that's something that should make building somewhat complicated action a lot more approachable. Yes, then we are adding support for Portuguese Brazilian user interface. So if that's of interest to you, give it a go. If you're not interested, give it a go anyway to see if how that looks if you spoke Portuguese. Yeah. And then finally, we got the files as related value. It's something that we never really supported in the Windows client, but in the web client, the history is that we forgot to block users from actually creating these. So you could create a related value that looked up a file feature, but it was not really supported throughout the applications. The Windows client and web client each has their own issues with doing this, but now we've actually fully supported this. So now related value with files work as you would expect this to work, just like we can do with images. And finally, we're adding some better support for text in the web client. Those of you who are used to working with Windows clients know that we got this option called control options on the text features. You can choose if you want to use the default editor or you want to use the inline editor. That option is now also supported in the web client. So if you have like 10 different marketing text for different marketplaces, and you have them in the same page in the item editor, that previously would take up a lot of space. But now the default inline editor, that just works a little easier. It's more dynamic. It will scroll when the text gets to a certain length, or I can use the default text editor, which will always only be one line, which you can then open and work on more. Yes, that was like the headline for the release. Now Stephen is going to take over and take a deeper dive into some of this.
Just before I do, Jeppe, actually, I've had a couple of questions that have come in that are probably appropriate to address right now. And one of them was about the support for Google Gemini. And I explained that we're currently only natively supporting OpenAI, but of course it is possible to integrate with other AI providers via the generic select API command. The reason why we developed action commands such as select GPT is to make it provide more native support for some of these AIs. So I don't know whether you wanted to expand on any plans to look beyond OpenAI in the future.
We don't have any concrete plans for that. We chose OpenAI because that is the most popular one at the moment. But please let us know if you're very interested in using one service or the other, because if we find that there are like general requests for using Google Gemini AI or whatever Microsoft provides or something like that, please let us know.
What about a poll?
Oh yeah, that would be a good reason for using that one.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, but no, it's only OpenAI for now. But please let us know if you're interested in something else. Then we'll definitely consider adding support for more things. It's always a risk when we decide upon one service or another. We did Google and DeepL for the translations, so we might also do additional services for AI if there's a need for it.
Yeah, there's also a question on context parameters for DeepL translations. I know that the first point at which we went beyond the standard translation was to incorporate the glossaries, which are, for those that don't know, are effectively like a sort of custom dictionary for your translations. Is that this context parameters? Is this something that you're familiar with, Jeppe?
Not really, but I could imagine something like putting in more context, just like you can do with DeepL. You say you are a marketing assistant, help me with this. We don't have
Yeah.
anything for the drawing board regarding that.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for responding to those. Share my screen now.
Yeah.
Sorry, screen. Okay. So let's bring up my notes. I'm going to talk about the new features in two groupings today. The first half is going to focus on the AI related elements, and then the latter three will focus on the new action commands. So Jeppe explained about the look and feel, and there's only minor changes in this release, although given the fact that the menu bar is present on all of the screens, it will have it will clearly look very different on regardless of which section that you're in. Here's the login screen now, which is slightly different with the subtle orange drop shadow as I log in. You'll see the black menu bar, the top of the web application over here. And the other difference being that the tools menu has now been incorporated into this icon just over here, nestling next to the job window and notification center as well. So let's initially talk about, we were talking about AI just then, and then when we first looked at incorporating AI capabilities into Perfion, it was actually Jeppe himself that developed this action to be able to talk to the Open AI API, get a response back, parse out that response, and it was a fantastic way to get us up and running very, very quickly and put us in a position to be able to demonstrate the capabilities of Perfion integrated with these new emerging technologies of AI. But from those very early stages, of course, we were all mindful that we wanted to make it as seamless and as straightforward as possible. And the next iteration of that was to bring in the select API command, which then simplified it somewhat by parameterizing a lot of the values that you need to send over, things like dictating which model is being used and so on and so forth, and connection parameters. And yet still there was an aspiration to bring AI to a wider audience, and the way that we've gone about doing that is to natively integrate OpenAI, and we're using this template-based approach. So let's go into the application and see how we achieve that. So here's my coffee machines, and we can see that we've got a text field here that's missing some descriptions. I can just right click and we can see you'll start to see this AI icon, the application, which is where we're introducing elements. This create with AI will launch this overlay. It's base feature specific, shall we say. So this pane over here is showing me all of the features that are in the configuration for the base feature of the grid that I've just launch this from, and it's got the filter that works as expected. And now I can just use a formula where I can type out write a 100-word etc., etc. And the way that you make it dynamic is you can bring in elements of values from the item name. Just click once, and then I can bring in item name of the following item, and then if you have over time perhaps built up a number of these dynamic values, it's useful to know how this is actually going to be sent over to the API. So you can always view the prompt, and you can see the substitution of the real world values for this particular application, and then click generate to actually send that over. I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that you can actually save these templates as well. So if I drop down, we can see that we've got one saved here already. And then I can view this prompt again. We substitute the values in and generate. Subject, as always, to the latencies of catering with an external API. But here's the response. You can see that there's some HTML markup there, but I can just save and close. And then that's written back to that particular cell. Some important points to note. This is only going to work in the context of one particular item. So if I right click, I can do that for this next item here. But if I'm highlighting multiple cells, then it's grayed out. Okay, so if we go into administration, we've got this icon for integrations and setup. We've got the settings for OpenAI. We can supply my partly redacted API key and the model that's used by default. You can see that mini model is used there. I believe there's also a nano model because the likes of the queries that you're sending over really don't need to leverage the excellent capabilities of the main models, and because these are fairly simple requests that we're sending over. So for me, it would make more sense to start to use some of those mini and nano specialist models, because you'll have far lower latency and much better performance. And those templates that I saw before, they're base feature specific. I only have ones set up for product right now. There's those 3 templates that we saw for thermojug, cups, and coffee machines. So this is another way of administering those outside of the context of the overlay that pops up when you launch and attempt to use them. Over in settings as well, we're starting to bring over more of the settings. Clearly, the goal is to ensure that you can complete any activity that you want within the web application. I don't know, at a rough guess, I'd say we were in the high 90s right now in terms of the functionality that is common between the two. And if we take a look at this first one initially, this relates to the supplier portal, so only specific to those that have that module. SMTP server can be specified here, including different connections for different applications, so general email and notifications, and you can plug in those SMTP details there. Some email templates to go along with those that you will send out in those circumstances. Translation services and management of the and your license. So in the last 12 months or so, we've rolled out a license server where you can auto update your license manually. Not necessary most of the time, because there's a scheduled job that is installed as part of the upgrade that periodically goes into the server and automatically applies updated licenses where applicable, and you can just flick amongst these tabs to see which services and modules your license entitles you to, including the upcoming expiry date. Okay, let's move to the import wizard next. And if I go back to the grid and then move over to menu, import wizard, which is introduced in one of the more recent versions. Browse to select an import file and then move next. And put in the base feature, hit next. And this is very common, certainly for when you, from personal perspective, from in implementation projects, and getting a source of information doesn't necessarily map to the fields that I need to put them into within Perfion. And this would usually be the start of a fairly tedious process where I'd have to update the source file, the spreadsheet, to ensure that there was a direct correlation between the name of the feature and the column header within the document. And no longer is that necessary, thankfully. So I can just hit this AI map and note the AI icon again. And let me just take a moment to explain what's happening at this point. So we are taking the feature name of all of the features in the configuration of the base feature that I've just selected on the previous screen. So we won't be considering features that are outside of the configuration. It's by design, and I think that's the correct decision. But not just the feature name, we're also incorporating and checking against the caption, but specifically the caption in the language of the interface language of the user that is using this AI mapping. So my interface language is English. We're taking the and only considering the English translation of the caption when we're trying to map up these fields within this import data source to potential homes in terms of features within Perfion that they need to go to. So it's done a great job. It's matched up pretty just sense check to see whether there's any issues or anomalies there. And then just if they weren't obvious or tagged within the import document, I can specify the language and then move on as usual. But it's really that straightforward. It's just a question of clicking the button, and then the attempted mappings will send over the source file headers, and then we'll get back the suggested mappings. Now, again, going back to my own personal experience, it is a very iterative process, and this is part of the journey. The next step is there'll be some validations, and it may well be that there'll be some anomalies or quirks within the data that will cause my import to fail, and then I'll need to go and check that, maybe change some of those values and attempt the import again. And prior to the ability to save these mappings, that was again quite painful, because I'd possibly have to make these selections again. But thankfully now we can save these mappings. And our mapping 2, hit save, and then they're available to me to reload at any. Got some previous ones here that I could load. If I just make the selection and vary the one that I have saved, this is a nice touch. I'm being the application is aware of the fact that I'm working on the basis of one of these mappings. It's spotted I've got to change, a bit like when you change a view, you're prompted to save and update. And sometimes you may want to do that, other times you may not. Okay, so that pretty much concludes the first part of what I wanted to talk about, and now I'll move on to actions, the new action commands, and in order to facilitate that, I will switch to the Windows client we have here. And first of all, I'm going to start off with showing you how things used to be, or I guess because we haven't officially launched 5.8, that's going to be any day now, pretty much as it is now. And here is an action which is very common, whereby I'll be receiving a data source from perhaps the grid itself, or maybe from a trigger. And if it's from the grid, I might have a data source named items, and then I'll go through this process. You can see that there's several steps here, and I'm using this technique to build up this string here of all of the item IDs within that data source, to then plug that into this Perfion API query, just so I can find out some further information. In this case, the group name, the brand name, and the category. And somebody within Perfion that was had spotted this and said surely there must be a better way, and indeed there is, with the advent of this Perfion from table. So this first line here, pretty much what we've is replaced by just these two lines, and in fact one of these lines is only here to replicate that that data source of items. So this is just for the purposes of my setup to simulate that grid here. So execute and hit start. So this really is a visualization of what you would receive within a context action. So you're in the grid, you bulk select items in your grid, and you'll send them to be to an action to process them, perhaps to perform some AI or transformations on them. And as I say, before we had to try and extract this and construct it in a way that was API friendly. But now all we need to do with just this one step and this select Perfion from table command, I can just plug that data source items straight in as the input to the command. And then I can perform a query, and we can see that we've got the results, whereas previously we just simply had the IDs that were coming in. So no need now to perform all this various different hacks and workarounds. You can pretty much directly take the input source and go and gather the crucial information that you're interested in. So that's the first one of three, the Perfion from table, select Perfion from table. So this next one, select GPT. So I would label this and present this as perhaps the halfway house between original incarnation of this, the select API, where there was still quite a fair bit of scripting involved, and then perhaps looking at the other extreme, the very user-friendly template-based approach. Coming somewhere in the middle of that is select GPT, and the advantage of the select GPT over the template-based approach for now is that the select GPT will allow you to process multiple items. So clearly it's far more scalable than just working on one item at a time. That's not to say that the template-based approach won't be compatible with multiple items in future, but for now, if you did want to process and send multiple items from the grid or otherwise, you can do that with the select GPT command. So this first step here is really just about generating a data source to process, which is fed into the select GPT command. So we're just grabbing 4 records and 4 features, and we've just got some criteria there to make sure that we've got data for them. And then we'll map that to a different data source called AI Enhanced, which will be exactly the same as the input data source, but with an extra column, which houses the response from the AI service. That result column is one of the parameters to the command, so I've called SEO keywords, and pretty much everything else is there's multiple parameters, seeing things like the temperature and the maximum number of tokens used and so on. But all of the other ones are optional, which is why I have them out here, apart from the model to be used. So I'll just run that. And yes, I was slightly concerned around my this, but I did find in my testing that was very specific to the ChatGPT 5 model, but interestingly not 5.1, but generally those nano and mini variants of the models, I would imagine would be perfectly sufficient and as I see, and better performance on those. My secondary data source, the out data source, the excuse me, the AI enhanced Perfion table includes all of the rows and columns of the input table with the addition of the response from the AI, which is these SEO keywords. So if we look at my prompt that I've put into the script, we can see that it's human readable. It's basically the prompt that I'm sending through, but anything that I want to put in dynamically will put into these curly brackets. So that is basically a sort of a way of sort of hard coding which values from the input table that which takes us to the final one, writing to the job log in terms of that option. And in order to demonstrate this, I simply took an existing output to file, an existing action that I had, which just ran an API query and output that particular file. So I put that particular data to various files, Excel, CSV, XML, and so on. And so I just simply added in a parameter, which is this output file as parameter, as job. And as Jeppe mentioned, the advantage of this is that you don't need to physically manifest this on any particular hard drive. You can have this available to you as a download. Demonstrate. So clicking on that completed job will launch all of the associated files. Just got options here as it's processing the file and loading that up in my associated application. It as many things are. If I go to the completed jobs there, clearly we'll see the same information, but in this case I've got the option to download all files as a zip, or indeed individual files that particular action generated. So right to the job log outcome, if you specify that in the parameter of the right command, applicable to any of the right commands that we have. So that's all I wanted to show. Over to you, Jeppe, back to you for the remainder of the
Great.
presentation.
Thank you for that. We got a couple of questions. I think some of them might be worth going over. You will get a recording of this demo after the webinar. It will also automatically be sent out in a couple of hours, I believe. Then they ask if they can use AI to standardize their data. As currently, when they get data from different suppliers, there might not be a consistent way that they deliver this. That's not been part of Wave. So we don't have any innate support for this. But I suppose you could use a combination of the old way of writing these AI actions together with this SlakeGPT to do something like this.
Actually, I've got a good use case there, and it was from a customer that was responsible for printer consumables. They sold print cartridges, and they checked an online catalog where they could send over the model of the um, printer cartridge and get a list back from this I think it was GS1 or IceCap perhaps, of the compatible printer models. Now you would think that being a universal catalog that it would have structured data in a consistent format. Unfortunately, it wasn't. There was various different separators. Sometimes it was line breaks, other times it was semicolon, colon separated, and other times it just wasn't structured at all. And that was AI was an amazing application there to send over what we'd pulled back from the catalog, and we given that when the prompt we'd explained that there would be semi-structured data, shall we say, and AI did an amazing job of turning that into structured data, which meant we could then validate that and import it back in a structured format. So and that, because that was, they were talking about many tens of thousands of products, that was a fantastic time saver for them.
Oh, that sounds great. Also, they did a poll while you were presenting. I asked if people were considering or already using AI in their Perfion. And I see that 63% are already using AI and 30% of their meta are considering or already using it, and 60% are considering using it. So that hopefully you got some features here to help you in that journey.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that making it so user friendly with the advent of the templates in the next release means that we're really lowering the barrier to entry for people to start engaging with AI.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, continuing. We have also done a number of updates to the supplier portal for this release, which I think is very interesting and needs to be mentioned. The first one is that now it's possible to lock supplier items. So the supplier item is very much a sort of conversation between you and your supplier, where you at some point agree upon what is this product. So you have decided that this product is good. Now it's okay, we have accepted it. And now you also have the option of logging this item. And that means that the supplier will no longer be able to update it. So when an item is finished, you now have the options of checking it as locked, and then nobody will be able to update this item until you unlock it. And sort of the same way, just like you can lock when an item is done and should not be changed, then you can also reject previously accepted items now. Whereas before you didn't really have a good option of doing it, but now you can actually break the link between your item in Perfion and the item that the supplier has. So maybe something has changed. Maybe you don't want this product anymore. Maybe you want the supplier to actually, do something with this product before you can start selling it again. So now you can break this link between the item in Perfion and the supply item, and it will go back into draft mode on the supply item side. So they will have to do something with it there. We've also did a number of updates to how behind the scene is how our API query works behind the scene, but that gives some benefits in the supplier portal is that you can now do queries that looks at both data that's exposed to the suppliers, but also data that is back in the main Perfion. And that gives some new options for how to do these queries. We can make some more dynamic supplier dashboards, meaning that you can do like a lookup that find products that has this specific status in Perfion and expose that to the supplier. You cannot really do that before. This works also like in the general API, so you can do update or delete queries if you need to do that based on supply item, but based on data that you have back in the main Perfion. Perfion. So that should open up some new use cases. That's actually quite good. And finally, if you are one of the users that uses the supply portals in a very automatic, a slightly more complicated workflow, then you can now actually import your supply users and organization through actions. So you can really fully automate this process on onboarding new suppliers into your system. So you don't need to do anything manually to get new users into the system. Now, that was everything feature-wise about now. Then we have a couple of other things about this feature that is worth mentioning. Security is always a focus when you speak of software, and this release is no different. The main one for now is that our web client no longer support HTTP without yes. That's not, if you're on our SaaS solution, then you don't need to worry about that at all. This is something we will handle. But if you are still on a self-hosted solution, then this is something worth considering if you're hosting the web client or the spy portal internally somehow, that these applications must be hosted on HTTPS now. That's it's a requirement for some of the UI components we use. Of course, we want to also post that, and that really complies with modern security practices. That web application needs to be hosted securely. Besides that, for the next year, we will also force API authentication on the main Perfion API. The file and image API might not be affected in the first round, but we do want to ensure that whoever connects to your Perfion through the API must provide credentials to not just an open API. Another thing worth mentioning is that our knowledge base is moving. So while we're now hosting it on Confluence on our own Perfion domain, then we want to move it into the general Boyum syndisk. Well, the other Boyum domains also contain their user guides and manuals. Nothing changes. We might redo some of the articles and how it's structured, but for now we just copy everything we have in our Confluence, copy that to the Boyum syndisk, and otherwise it would be the same. A side note of that is that the search functions in Zendesk is actually quite good and better than in Confluence. So I find it easier to look up documentation in this one, but there should be no really changes in how you experience using our documentation. If you use the knowledge.perfion.com direction, then that will always take you to whatever is the most updated one. I think it still links to Confluence, but at some time in the near future, that's going to link to Zendesk instead. Then we are also deprecating some functionality. For this release, we have moved the very old feature called filter off. I don't think we had a lot of customers actually using it, and it didn't really work that well. Our new filtered values, it's a couple of releases old now, works much better and does the same thing. We're also removing support for something called the remote web service interface, which was some code you could download and use to code against the Perfion API, but it's not really needed anymore as it's been mostly replaced by OData and these select API commands we have in actions. We also had support for importing related sorters for a file, which didn't really work that great. It was very difficult to use, and the code behind it was not great. So we are working on a new solution for that one. Not descoped or deprecated for now is but we are planning it or under considering at least is the rich text format editor, because it's an old tool and we don't see a lot of use for it in the world we are in right now. It's not the rich text editor, the HTML text editor thing that's still very popular and has a lot of use cases, but the old one, which is only available in the Windows client, we are considering that for deprecation. If you want to look at everything we have deprecated or plan to deprecate, please have a look at the Zendesk site. We have a list of it there. And if you see something on this list which is very precious to you, please let us know. We are always open to listen for suggestions for what not to deprecate. So that was everything from now in the past. Now we're going to look a little ahead for the next years, and especially for the next release, our spring release next year. Before we dive deeper into that, I want to tell you about our open roadmap for Perfion that can be found in our Notion site that is public. You can find Perfion and the other Boyum products in there. So if you want to see what's going on in Perfion or the other Boyum products, please have a look. This is an ever-changing list about our priorities. So if you look today and you look in 3 weeks, it might be different, but because we are always trying to prioritize what we see is the most important one. If you look at the blue column, the one that's called 6 to 12 months, then we have the first topic, which is called continuous improvement based on external feedback. That's actually one of the main sources where we capture what we want to do. That is by listening to you or your partners or our internal colleagues. So we are always trying to capture what people see as a need in Perfion. We have our own goals of where we see the Perfion application, but we always love getting requests from you guys about where you see you want to improve Perf. So we do always keep some space available in our releases to things based on what comes externally. Next one is called more options and flexibility in data modeling. Uh, what that precisely means is mostly two things we're considering for now. One of them is that we are working on breakable inheritance. So, today, if you put a value on the parent, then it'll be inherited to all of the items below. We are considering adding options to actually break that as an option. So you can say, well, for this feature, it gets its value for the parent, but if you want to, then you can actually override that. Another one is how we do this item dependency. We decide, well, on your coffee machine, you need this, this, and this. On your coffee makers, you want this, this, and this. We are considering in making that inheritable. You can put that on a top level, and then all of the steps will flow down the hierarchy will get the same value there. Another big topic for the next release is probably going to be digital asset management. We have a number of cool features to improve how you actually manage videos and images and files, and soon also videos in Perfion. And then we're going to continue working on how to build more AI inside Perfion. The purple and the red column, they are still more in the idea phases. We're looking at adding some better product variant support. We are a PIM system, but we don't really have a solid concept of what a product in a Perfion and how it relates to variants. So we are looking on ways to improve that to build a more product-focused way of working with Perfion. Together with that, we also like to see if we can do like a user experience overhaul. Perfion it's very much a grid, almost Excel-like interface, and we are going to continue to do that. But we are looking to maybe so we can do some other ways of interacting with Perfion, where it's much more product focused. And then we have Actions version 2 and a workflow editor we're considering. So these are mostly some different ways of interacting with Perfion. So we want to, at some point, make Actions easier to work with. We want to make it more graphical, so you can drag and drop components. The same thing with the workflow editor. It's really more of a common area of working with. We've got actions, we got triggers, we got dashboards, we got views, we got filters, but it's all scattered around Perfion. So we want to make that, a common place we can actually work with this. Now, being a bit more concrete, I want to tell you what we're planning right now for our next release, the spring release next year. The main one is going to be focus on this Boyum makeover. Our hope is to have everything in this Boyum look and feel, away with the blue colors and in with some black and orange. Another benefit with that one is that also allows us to start supporting some branding in Perfion. So you can actually put some accents, just like you can do the Windows client. You can choose if it's based on red or based on blue or based on green. We're looking to add some more options for that also for the web client. Then we have a topic called mixed item widgets and dashboards, and that really ties mostly into how you handle digital assets in Perfion. I know a lot of customers, they import a lot of files, a lot of images, and also videos. But to build workflows for that in Perfion, you really need to do separate workflow for images, for files, for uh, images, videos, etc. And we're looking at doing like widgets that can hold multiple different types of base features at the time to make sure that even if the base feature is different, then you actually use the same workflow for them. Same thing, we are expanding upon our AI tools. We're looking to expand upon what we can already do today with this templates one. We want to make sure you can also bulk edit. We're looking at how you can actually do some more data mining based on the data you have. So if you have some user guides or you have some product images, well, then actually use a language module to help pull data from that. Then also adding some more functionality for the Select GPT. And we're also looking at how we can actually use some more as you know, with chatbots, some similar natural language interaction with Perfion, where you can ask, hey, do I have any blue coffee makers? And it will return the blue coffee makers you have in the system. We're adding support for videos because we're seeing a rise of that need where people, they manage images and files in Perfion, but also want to manage the images. You can do that as a file, but we want to add some more native support for that actually. That ties into the next one. We also want to do some advanced validations for a digital asset. So if you have an image, you'll be able to say, well, it must be at least this big, or it cannot be larger than this, and stuff like that. And same for files and images. Which file types do you actually support? So put on some more validations for what you upload to Perfion. Then we're also continuing on the web client enablement. We are planning on managing your scheduled jobs, managing your triggers, and we're also building this very nice Perfion API tool. Also want to move that to the web client, so you can build API queries in Perfion, because we know that's still used a lot when you build search queries, when you build triggers and views and filters. So there's still a lot of use for that tool, and we want to have support for that in the web client. Finally, we also want to add support for remote images. So if you store your images on some external web page or Dropbox or whatever, you want to make sure that you can still use those images just like you use images in Perfion. So the image might be located on this place over here, but you can still use it in your report. You can still use it in your e-commerce channels from Perfion. We just look up and fetch the image from the external site. Yes, that was the entire song and dance we had planned. That took exactly an hour. That was a good hit. Stephen, is there any new questions in the chat?
Yep. Benjamin's asking about some standard views in the item editor. Just ask for some clarification there. I think it's in the Windows client, perhaps. But yeah, sorry. I think we may need to take that one up offline.
Yeah, there's nothing planned like that. The item card is always going to show everything that's configured on the product, of course, divided into the different section and tabs you have. But we don't have any planned for adding support for the views in the item card, at least not right now. Okay. Well, if there's anything else, I want to say thank you so much for participating. I hope it was interesting. It was nice doing. As said, we hope to have the release out, if not next week, then the week after that. There are still a couple of things we want to make sure is tested probably before we release this. Otherwise, let's keep in touch, and otherwise see you next year to the next release webinar.
Thank you.
Bye.